Kuntil,
Yeah.
You change the slide when I reach that slide.
Yeah, I will change the slide as you introduce the panelists. I hope you got the profiles.
Okay. Yeah. We'll start, huh? It's 3:30.
Yeah, let's start.
So, hello everybody. The topic today is rural tourism. As we discuss this topic, I'm reminded of Mahatma Gandhi's famous words, India lives in its villages. Our government policy paper defines rural tourism as any form of tourism that showcases rural life, art, culture, heritage at rural locations, thereby benefiting the local community economically and socially, as well as enabling interaction between the tourists and the locals for a more enriching tourism experience. Can be termed as rural tourism. So this is a government policy paper definition. Obviously, it offers you the chance to feel closer to nature, lets you rejuvenate, break away from the chaos of big cities, and unwind at a leisurely pace. Farm stays, farmers markets, local produce, local culture, and increased investment in local economy makes rural tourism a sensitive and sustainable way to experience India's rich hinterlands. The ability to tune into the nuances of local culture and heritage, emotional connect with the people, and traditions passed down from centuries makes the homestay, farm stay, and agri-tourism stays a very popular choice for travelers looking to delve into India's rich cultures and traditions. Rural tourism is also an empowering experience for the local community, who are integral players in its success. It would be a great boost to the local economy as also to traditional music, dances, arts and crafts. The practice of rural tourism in India has been there over several decades. India is 70% rural. And especially when we talk about Rajasthan, where many nobilities opened their family homes and palaces to travelers as luxury homestays that offer a glimpse into real India. To have with us a panel of pioneers who ventured into the world of rural tourism in India and opened their homes to travelers from around the world. These places offer a taste of authentic Indian hospitality without the pretense of urbane polish. From agri-tourism to complete culture and culinary immersion, we will be delving deep into what rural tourism has to offer into India. Now, I'd like to introduce our panelists here in order of, in alphabetical order. So we have this Harkirat Alua. He did his schooling in Chandigarh and graduation in Mass Comm at Punjab University. And he was just 26 when he returned to his village in Hoshiarpur with the intention to bolster the family income. Harkirat, along with his father and brother, gradually installed the revolutionary drip irrigation technique on his farm orchards, besides mechanizing all other processes. In 2008, Harkirat opened Citrus County, Punjab's first rural homestay, situated amidst one of the family's Kinno orchards. They are citruses. The stay offers a perfect balance of horticulture, agroforestry, and the quintessential Punjabi good life, complete with delicious home-cooked food, cozy bonfires, and of course, plenty of spirits. As we all know, Punjabi hospitality is unsurpassable. I don't know if the Rajasthanis would agree with me there. We have next on our panel Smriti Singh from Mandava. Smriti left behind a successful career in travel and tourism to pursue her dream of being the charm of a family farm, Johar, to travelers from all over the globe. For as long as she can remember, she has been enchanted by Johar. As a child, she looked forward to the summers where she would spend her holiday at the farm, sleeping out on the terrace under the stars, taking dips in the same plunge pool her grandfather used as a boy, and riding horses and camels through the never-ending fields. Those memories and experience Smriti's inspiration for her thoughtfully restored and renovated Johad, including the plunge pool. And Johad wants to offer intimate experiences of rural Rajasthan on a family farm. So we learn about more from Smriti about this. And then we have Srini TS. Srini, who leads Neelambari, is an engineer by qualification. And after graduating from the prestigious IIT Kanpur, he successfully moved into, from his automation in 17 years, he had a job. He took him to nearly 50 countries from across the world. And he got an opportunity he cherished more for the cross-cultural exchanges than for business. He later quit his job and headed back to his Thrissur to create Neelambari. He was the best of culture, nature, and healing that Kerala has to offer. Last but not the least, we have Tamiksha Singh Rathod. Tamiksha is from Shapura Bagh, and she joined her family to help run the estate 2 years ago. She completed her bachelor's degree in political science and then went on to work for Zomato in HR before returning home to Rajasthan. As a newcomer in the dynamic industry, she has been focusing on learning the ropes and eventually aims to ensure that Shapura remains a preferred destination for travelers looking to experience peace, comfort, and warm hospitality that Rajasthan is renowned for. So those are our 4 panelists. I'll start with the questions, and I'll start with Tamiksha first. So Tamiksha, when was Shapura Bagh set up to receive tourists, and what made your family get into this business? Any challenges you faced, and tell us about the motivation of your family to get into to open Shapura Bagh to tourists.
So to be very truthful, I was in class 6 when my family actually started renovating Shapura. Shapura Bagh, the estate has been in the family for generations and was carved out of the state of Udaipur and presented by Shah Jahan to my forefathers. And since then, it's been in our family. In around 2006, when my grandfather passed away, my father and uncle decided to leave their jobs in Delhi and Bombay and come back to Rajasthan and focus on opening their homes to others. I think the primary reason at that point was that we had these huge estates and a lot of land, and there was no way to maintain these properties and keep them running because there's no privy purse anymore, or there's no other form of income actually. So we used tourism to be able to keep our home how it used to be in the days before. So it really broke my father and uncle's heart to see that these rural parts of India are getting so neglected, and tourism really empowered us to be able to not only maintain a standard of living for the people, our entire community, but also give them exposure to people from different parts of the world. And I think that was the main focus in 2006. In 2006, we started setting it up. I think we were ready to welcome guests in 2007. That also with only 2 or 3 rooms running, and it's just been developing from there. And we're still small, still just a home, 10 rooms, 10 luxurious rooms, like we like to say, to offer. And that was basically what their thought process was.
I'll ask the same question to Srini. Srini, what were the driving factors that made you want to start Neelambari? I mean, leaving behind an engineering career and coming back to your village in Thrissur. Tell us about what was your motivation?
Sure, Lovelin, and thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So, Lovelin, my motivation was rather a process of discovery. grew up in my village till I was maybe about 18. So when you grow up in a specific circumstance, you do not realize the culture, the tradition that's so accessible to you. It's only when you move out, you live in another country, another state, and then you look back with some longing, with some nostalgia. That's when you realize that what you are missing and what is the value that the outside world attaches to things that you take for granted in your day-to-day life. So that happened with me quite a lot when I was working abroad, when I was, even before that, when I was studying. So always this thought was there that there's so much of value back in my village, back in my region, culturally, historically, traditionally, that can be of immense interest to the outside world. Second, the remark that you made in the opening phase about Gandhiji. So a very small way, like when I was doing my graduation in IITK, we had a humanities course and our professor took Swaraj. Swaraj was a pamphlet that Gandhi had written on his return from South Africa. Somehow that stayed with me throughout. I mean, ever since I picked it up in my 20s, that it stayed throughout and I would always go back to it. A lot of ideas that seemed revolutionary, evergreen. So in some way, there was this idea that I did not want to do a career that will end up at 60 and then I go into a vegetation mode. I said, no, I have to break it and then do something different. So put these things together, that the value that I saw when I was abroad in my village and the idea that I would like to do something for my village and my community, these two things together, plus the help and the support that I got from my family and my friends, all this brought together into what is Neelambari today.
Right. Very interesting. Harkirat, I'll ask you the same question. Around the same time that Shahpura opened, you ventured into agro-tourism. So what was your motivation?
See, I mean, we've always, been growing citrus in our farms. So, I mean, we almost, the problem was that citrus was in a very large area, about 300 acres, and it was planted by my grandfather. And what was happening was that we were diversifying in citrus, like we were, replanting some new varieties which we imported from America with the help of Pepsi. So we set up, it was still in the different phases where, we were planting our orchards. So what was happening was that the income was coming down because, it was such a difficulty to maintain such a huge establishment. So then I realized, I said, why don't we just try to gain some more income from the same land, from the same farm. So I came out with this idea, okay, let's start inviting people into our home and show them what Punjabi culture and how we live our life at the farm. So slowly in 2008, I set up my first farm stay, which is Citrus County. I set up some tents there with the help of a very dear friend of mine, Harsh, who was very nice and generous to welcome me in his house in Chhatrasagar. And he's the guy who really helped me out to set it up. And we became good friends after that. So, that was one of the reasons why this came into existence, and because of shrinking incomes. And also I was always, wanting to, contribute back to my people here at the farm and around, because this village was set up by my grandfather. So, I thought, why not give some employment to people? So slowly, I never believed in hiring trained people, So I went in for my local people here and trained them. So basically from unskilled, we converted them into skilled guys, which, they're still with us. The same guys are still working for us. So this was one of the reasons why I set up this. Then after that, we got a good response, but still, we were running out of ideas. Okay, how do you entertain people here? What experiences you have to give to people here? So slowly, everything started coming into, new ideas started coming to us also, because we were also new in this line. And slowly it became nice, and, it became very interesting for us to meet people also. So in the summers, we started looking at kaun aayega, bore ho gaye, now or guest leke aao. So then I set up a second farm stay in the hills, in the Tirthan Valley, just because of this reason that summers we are free. So we set up one there then. Again, the same concept, right in a village there, but very small. I was very, certain that whatever I make is going to be very small. I'm not going to go in for 50 rooms or 60 rooms, not more than 8 to 10 rooms per property. So there we set up 5 rooms. So slowly, the interest began to come in, and some income also started coming in, and bas usse ab chal raha hai aage. So we've again made another farm stay in Punjab, in Hoshiarpur only. We expanded in Hoshiarpur, and it's called Firdaus. So that also has because a lot of our old guests are coming back to us. So we've started giving a little more luxurious experience there than what we used to do in Citrus County, because we wanted to take the quality a little more up, for a little more up market. So that's what we've been able to do. So now we are targeting all kinds of market. Like in the hills, it's a very mid-range market. Citrus County is a little above that, and Firdaus is a little more above that. But the experiences are the same.
Interesting.
So that's how
we'll come to the experiences later. So basically your motivation was to open up your home to others and see what you guys are doing, and it was something you wanted to share. That's interesting.
See, the farmers have the same problems, the farmers have the same issues.
Yes.
So that's how they open.
Exactly. Then, Smriti, I have a question for you. So you are the new kid on the block, literally. You've just opened, and here we are in the middle of COVID-19. So tell us, what was your motivation to set this venture up? And how did you come about it?
Bilkul. Thank you so much. Namaste, everybody. Thank you, lovely Inji. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to all of you and share my thoughts and a bit of my journey and motivation. So basically, listening to Harki, Raji, and Srini and Tamiksha, there is a common thread between all our reasons and motivations. It is for the benefit of, I think, everybody, this is my understanding and benefit to the audience, is the fact that the times in the last 70 years in our country have changed so drastically that we, the past 2 generations and now we, the third, have been trying to adapt, have been trying to figure out what to do, how to live. I wouldn't say that, we have left our flourishing careers and come here. No, I would say we have come back. We were out to explore, and we have come back to places. In fact, in today's environment, I would say we were migrants most of our lives, in our educational lives and professional lives. Little politically a sore topic, but anyway, I'll come back to that. That is how we have also lived and explored various things and had our own journeys. And these are the places where it's not we who come back to. This is where probably, 8, 9, 10 generations on either side of my parents have lived and lived off the land, lived off in harmony with the land. And there was a way of life that they practiced. And we sort of lost track a little with so many changes politically, economically, socially, in every aspect, to be able to adapt to it and figure out that how we want to live. And a lot of us, including myself, it has been a very organic movement to basically few common reasons of pride, where we came from, sense of responsibility, that we have inherited, or this is in our family. We are lucky to have these kind of spaces in our family. So the responsibility along with it to be able to play our roles as custodians, not as owners. Please note, we are the custodians. We haven't built them. We are the custodians of this piece that we have in our family. The pride, responsibility, and then eventually what we and I particularly realized and started observing and becoming aware of how some choices were made without thinking, without awareness. So many choices were made without thinking because the times were such. And that has caused a lot of change in mindset and deteriorations in our society, the way we live. So this awareness sort of started coming to me very organically on every visit. Of course, spending time here as a child helped have that connect and to come back to it. And that is when I decided that, that's something that I want to learn. I want to really get to the depth of it and understand the way of life that persisted and that needs to be adapted in today's times. So these are the things that finally I decided that let's do something about it. So I will talk more about Jodh, but this is just to answer why and why am I here?
Thank you, Smriti. Very well summarized and articulated. So it is essentially a lifestyle choice that all of you have made. That brings me to my next question about your vision and USP, unique selling points. So I'll start with Harkirat again. So Harkirat, vision do you have promoting that farm tourism in Punjab and India? And you have also worked closely with the government on this subject. So tell us a little bit about your vision.
See, I always believe Punjab has always been leading on all fronts. And hospitality is one thing which comes very natural to Punjabis. But, the government somewhat was lost on tourism, because the main source of revenue for them was not tourism. It was excise or some other thing. So now, what I have realized that Punjab has such great potential in tourism because we have good food. We are not a very big state. We've got beautiful places to visit. We have the Golden Temple. You see, for religious point of view, Punjab has been one of the best for all kinds of religious tourism. So, I have been trying to promote a lot of that in Punjab. Like Sikhism is very prominent in Punjab. And, there's this festival called the Hola Mohalla, which happens in Anandpur Sahib. So, I realized that Anandpur Sahib, when I went there the first time, I realized we are missing on to showing people what this is all about. Where I have never in my life seen a congregation of 200 to 300,000 people and not even one incident there. Everyone feels safe there. And what a colorful kind of a festival that is. So I started promoting that in 2010. And since then, we always look forward to having our guests for Hola Mohalla every year. Then secondly, I always feel Punjab is very well connected. Like if you see the connectivity between cities, villages, very well connected. So it is not very difficult to make a good kind of a circuit for Punjab, where you will see Amritsar. In Punjab, hospitality cannot survive without being in Amritsar. Amritsar is the epicenter of tourism in Punjab, where Golden Temple is, where you have the Wada border, where now you have the town hall, where you have the partition museum. Then there are these so many people who take you for these beautiful walks around the old city of Amritsar. So a lot of activity in Amritsar, and we are very well located Punjab. Like for example, Hoshiarpur is about a couple of hours from Amritsar, and we are just 3 hours from Dharamsala into the Himalayas. So, I've thought that Punjab can be very well connected to people who want to visit Punjab as well as your Himachal as well as Rajasthan, because Rajasthan is also on one side of our border. So, that is my vision for Punjab. And I'll tell you, the kind of people visiting Golden Temple are more than visiting the Taj Mahal now. That's what I believe, And what potential Punjab has now, certainly the government has also woken up. In fact, day after I'm doing a webinar with the Chief Minister on this, on how to revive tourism in Punjab, because he also sees a big opportunity coming in Punjab for especially rural tourism. Because we are all rural. Punjab is rural, like Rajasthan is rural, Punjab is rural. So, and everyone likes to open their homes to people. So, to farm tourism policy of the Punjab government has been one of the best policies all over the country, where they have about 50 registered farm stay owners who have opened their homes. Of course, they need to really mark up their quality and awareness. But I feel we have a very big potential, and I see Punjab growing very well in tourism. And as far as my own thing is concerned, I am very optimistic about rural tourism in Punjab. So, that's why we are going on an expansion now, slowly.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thanks. Smriti, what is your vision, and what is the concept that Joharhat is? Tell us more about Joharhat and its uniqueness.
Sure, Lavleen. So, well, our vision primarily is to invest in sustainable practices with reference to the various aspects that play a role in way of life in a zone that we are in. We are in a semi-arid zone. We are at the beginning of Thar Desert. And so our idea here is, or the vision here is, to invest in sustainable practices, ways of living that actually forge pathways of economic, social sustenance. So when I say economical and social sustenance, because way of life and the community-based support system, the thought, the mindset of it is all of the social part of it, and the economical viability and sustenance is equally important. So here the vision was to be able to create agriculture, agroforestry, livestock, because Rajasthan's GDP actually 9 to 10% of our GDP, and not only today, is about 10%. And this is direct, and of course indirect impact is even more. But this is with the today's reference. But back in the day, like thousands and thousands of years ago, livestock in the desertic situation has played an equally and a very, very important role, as much as agriculture has. So it is very intertwined. So we are looking at creating a balance with the biodiversity, with flora, fauna, food, livestock, and structure all of this in a way by creating spaces to share this with people who are, especially in today's time, it's seeming more and more appealing to people. In today's time, is generating excitement, and especially with the global pandemic and crisis and how things are happening, it's resetting people's priorities. And I'm very happy about that. Because as a society, it's extremely important, I personally feel, is to make your priorities based and choices based on complete awareness. And my model here at Joharhat is to give a platform to people to build and share that system of living and community, and for them to take something from it that they can take back with them. And so we have about, let's say, we have about a 120-year-old koti in the center of about a 70-acre farm, which has 2 to 3 suites. My great-grandparents' rooms I have converted into guest rooms. And we have a private luxury villa, and we have a stepwell inspired, or an old plunge pool. Hod is what we call it locally, which we use as children. So a pool design which is inspired by what we already have. And a luxury villa I already mentioned. And for Shamiana luxury tents, we are in the process of creating more. The global term for that is natural homes, cob homes. So we are in the process of even setting that as an experience of stay between the spaces of the farm, where we have permaculture, and we have livestock, and we have agroforestry, and wetlands and a pond. So this is our big vision, and we are in the process of conserving our soil, our practices, reviving the biodiversity, and to be able to share this, our system, a way. This is, please note, it is a way of life that we want to share with people. It is not the only way. This is one of the ways. That is what we want to share and help people understand the mindset and the whole change, ignite the change in some way to look at things differently. That's all. That is all that our purpose is, to invite people and share those things in that way. Of course, we have a breed of Tharparkar cows, which is actually one of the top the breeds of Indian breeds of cows. We have a herd of that. We have 4 to 5 Bikaneri and local Rajasthani Shekhawati camels, a mix of that. We have our farm dogs, very friendly farm dogs, and a gaggle of chickens and roosters. So those are farm residents along with human beings that you will meet. Of course, I mean, in terms of if you spot a hare here and there, or a porcupine, or bird life, that's something else altogether. So in a nutshell, that is the vision, to share a way of life that we have practiced and now adapted to. Coming back from why I came, now adapted the wisdom and the knowledge and the information and practices in today's time. The accommodation or spaces wise, I don't want to elaborate too much on it, because I would assume the comforts of an air conditioning and basic things and amenities is, I propose, or I tell people to take it for granted and not talk about that. So that is something which we are trying to do here and share.
Thank you, Smriti, for that insight. Srini, I'll ask you a question now. Kerala has many homestays in rural settings. I mean, there are so many people just go to Kerala if they want a homestay. There's even a model village, I believe, the Kumbalangi village, which is supposed to be the eco village in Kerala, the model. How is your place unique?
For me, as I said, the key element has been the process of discovery. Like as I said earlier in my opening response, only when I started looking back that I started realizing the value of things that everyone takes for granted. Simple ceremonies or simple ways of doing things that, when you look at it from an outsider perspective, has got centuries of tradition and heritage and culture. For me, the whole idea about Neelambari is how I, for myself, discover these precious information or facets of our tradition, and how I showcase it for our guests that come here. So this process of discovery is the crucial element. And in terms of rural tourism, yes, I mean, Kerala has followed a quite successful model for several decades now. But specifically because of the very narrow confines, so spaces between urban, suburban, and rural, because of the way the Kerala demography is, as you know, probably. So I'm not sure to what extent we have packaged rural tourism as a unique or as a standalone experience in some of the other, for example, the homestay. And many of our homestays are in urban, or how well do they package that? That's something I'm not sure about. But as I said, in Neelambari or around Neelambari, the whole idea for me is to discover our traditions, discover our heritage, and discover our culture. And like we have had a group from the US, there were specific interests in terms of farming practices, and the kind of learning that I did, traveling with them, exploring with them, that was fabulous. And then we had another group that had come specifically to research on Renaissance influence in Catholic churches. I mean, it was an art history group. So again, it's eye-opening. I mean, I never thought that, because I thought Renaissance was Italian, and how Italians were never in Kerala. So how would there be Renaissance influence in Catholic churches? And then I kind of went with this group again, the immense amount of learning about my state or my neighborhood, the churches in my area, that's fabulous. I mean, so for me, the crucial thing, the crux of Neelambari is this process of discovery that I do myself, and that I try to do for my guests, or that I do with my guests.
How wonderful. A similar question for Tamiksha. There's so many rural homestays in Rajasthan also, Tamiksha. I mean, you can count them. Most of them are in rural setting, and most luxurious ones are also in the rural setting. So
Yes,
how
of
is
course.
your place unique, and what would you say was special about Shahpura Bagh?
I would like to draw from what Smriti said. Um, a lot of it comes from our innate sense of responsibility towards what we have. So, like she said, we are custodians, not owners. And that has been instilled in our way of thinking since we were children. And even more so for my father and my uncle, as they were living off of this land and they would come back here for their summer vacations. And they saw how their grandfather looked after the property. Um, a very interesting story, in the 1900s, there was a famine in Rajasthan. Particularly, Shahpura was very affected by it because it was fully arid. My great grandfather then mortgaged his land, his jewelry, and put in all of that money to create these 250 man made lakes around Shahpura. So, the 250 lakes that were created in the 1900s that are acting as water reservoirs for what Shahpura is today. So, in the 1900s, and all of these lakes have these plaques with how much money was contributed towards it, how much time it takes, what the catchment area is, what are the regions that use this water for agriculture and irrigation, and how that has changed the entire biodiversity of a place like Shahpura. When you think of Rajasthan, you think of the desert, you think of brown, you think of forts and palaces. When you're coming to Shahpura, which is between Jaipur and Udaipur, when you're driving in, you see these little lakes on the sides with date palm trees. It's a whole, you feel like you're entering. That's how my father came up with the phrase an oasis in unexplored Rajasthan. It's like you're coming into a little more beachy place in Rajasthan, and that's what makes it more beautiful. Um, Another thing that I would like to address over here is that how, because of us, all of us, in fact, being rural, a lot of sustainability, we didn't even have to think about making these practices. They came to us organically because we don't have access to easy fixes. There are no shortcuts over here. So everything that you have to think about is a long-term decision. My forefathers taking that step in the 1900s when CSR, sustainability, eco travel, all of these phrases nobody was talking about. They weren't even, especially in the villages, is something to show you how far-sighted they were and how they put the needs of the entire community above themselves. And that is exactly what. So I think our mission statement has come from there. Talking about our USP, I think that there are various and great luxury homestays in Rajasthan, but all of them have different families. So your interaction with the families and the interaction of your guests with the communities over here is different, and that cannot be, I mean, you cannot put a finger to it, how it is different. Another thing I think is that you're not only visiting one person's home, you're visiting an entire community. So the entire 250 square kilometers is open to you. We have 3 private properties, a 400-year-old fort. Most people come here and say we don't want to go to a fort. They say you're not going to do sightseeing, you're going to an old 400-year-old fort that looks old. You're going for a sundowner, you look down on the 5,000 person village and you see how this village life is coming to an close at the end of the day, how the temple bells are ringing. So it gives you insight into because of all the driving around that you're doing on your cultural excursions, gives you insight into a true rural Indian life. So I think that is a main USP. And especially because of our 250 man-made lakes, the bird watching is amazing. In fact, only on the property, on the estate itself, if you go for a walk, you can spot around 43 species of birds, which my father and uncle will be more than happy to take you on a walk, and we'll have to be begging to get you back in time for lunch or dinner. So I think it's a very organic experience. Your cultural excursions aren't like a safari in Ranthambore. where you're going out with my father or my uncle or maybe me in a jeep, and we're going to the fort, and we stop in 5 places, small villages on the way, where you see different tribes that have set up their settlements on. If they're a Banjara or a Gypsy tribe, on the side of the road, you get off, take a picture with them. You find out, okay, there are some problems here. There's an old man who is not getting medication. So these are only things that are possible if you go out in the village and you find out. My father will come back, he'll inform somebody, they'll make sure that he gets the medicine or something. The dam is broken. These 250 lakes to maintain them, it's the government's responsibility. But we can go and identify these issues and point them out and actually have a little bit more power or pull. And we can do jugaad. Jugaad is a very popular Indian word to be able to fix these problems. And I think that is the USP. It's the intent behind your experience. We are not
Yeah.
giving you an experience that we are playing on people's emotions. When they come here and they go to these villages and they're going to the fort and they look at this one child who's just so happy because you've taken a Polaroid picture of him and given it back to him, you really tend to think about that, how his eyes light up with joy. You think about your life and how many things you have and how different life is for everybody, and we need to bridge that gap because the system that we are like in the cities, the sheer wastefulness and even the how fast-paced life is. It's because you are in the system, you tend to overlook it. And when you come back here, and I'm only 24, I love fast-paced cities. But even for me to be able to realize the difference in only 2 years of being back home, I think is very eye-opening. So for people who don't have this insight, and most people come to India for a story. They come to India because of its culture and its heritage. Who do they meet? They meet at cookie cut hotels, they meet a manager. You can't talk to a manager. You meet your driver or a guide. You don't have a proper conversation. They want to talk about politics. They want to talk about why are there so many cows on the road? What is the significance of these temple bells versus the mosque prayers? Why do they happen at the same time? These are little things that you can't make a checklist for also. These are things that come up in a conversation. So I think that is the USP.
Yeah. Very well put, Tamiksha. So yeah, conversations are what people are looking for, and real conversations with real people. That brings me to my next question to the panel about experiences. This is what guests are looking for, all kinds of authentic experiences. So Harkirat, what are the experiences you offer to a guest? I mean, is there a hands-on farming experience at Citrus, or what kind of experience should we expect a guest to have when they visit you?
See, Lavleen, we are basically farmers. We are not exposed to much of the corporate life. So we can basically give what we have to our guests. We can share what we have. So basically, when guests come to us, obviously the first thing is that they like to share what kind of farming we are doing, what kind of innovations we are using in our farm, and what is the kind of plans which we have for our farming in the near future. So it's all about conversations, how the farming conversations come up, and then secondly, food. We cook at the farm, yeah. So we basically share our old recipes with them and cook with them, like basically since it's a farm stay, they become like family members, yeah. So like I normally take my guests along. Okay, let's go and buy some meat and let's buy some vegetables and let them be part of the whole process of cooking. Then we come back, we cook in the evening and over a drink, again conversations start. So basically the whole idea is to make your guests feel that they're part of our own family. They should not feel out of place, because they are actually in a small place which is lonely, away from the city, and so these are two experiences which I really cherish. I'm fond of doing this with my guests. Then also we have the safaris. We are very fortunate. We are right onto the Shivalik range here, and we've got beautiful otherwise either you come in a jeep or a tractor trolley with us. So we go for a good 2-3 hour round, or in the evening with a spotlight to show them some lovely animals, you know. So that is also a very good experience, which they like to, you know, see what all is there. Then, of course, since we are in the countryside, we've got cycles. They like doing a good bushwalk, or, you know, go into the village, meet people, you know. So we do all that kind of stuff for at least 3 days. If they are with us, they're pretty busy. And, you know, in fact, now I would like to share, you know, one of our guests from your company only would come to us. They're from England. So they have shown interest to come back every year to us and teach in our village for 2 weeks. So I am going to be hosting them for 2 weeks. And they've been so courteous that one of my cooks, her daughter, they are sponsoring her to the 10th class in a convent school. So, you know, this is the kind of bonding which we make with our guests, where the commitment level from us is reciprocated by them, and they get back to us with this kind of gesture, you know. Then also, of course, we guide them how to go about and see things in Punjab. Like, for example, Hola Mohalla, when it happens, I personally take the guests to Hola Mohalla. I don't just let them go. I mean, my place is just not that they come and stay here and they go to Hola Mohalla. No, I go with them, because I know how to take them and to keep them safe there, and, you know, to inform them about things, about history, about culture, how to keep themselves at pace with everything. So, you know, these are the kind of experiences but for me, the food and the farm experience is what they cherish the most, where, you know, they can get involved in it. That is it.
Thank you. Thanks, Kirat. On the same subject, my next question is to Smriti. Smriti, family holidays are a thing, and more and more people are traveling with their families now. So, do you offer a very children-friendly farm experience at your place, and how can the whole family enjoy a stay at Johar? Tell us a bit about that.
So I would, one is family, and I would answer your question in 3 to 4 points. So point number 1 is that in the current scenario, the travelers visiting India and travelers traveling across India and Rajasthan, Johor can be a point at the beginning of the tour before one deep dives into the intense nation with diverse experiences that we have. It can be nice and unwinding. And we are close to the Delhi airport by 4.5 hours drive, approximately. If Delhi is already visited on the way into India, then instead of leaving from India, with the last stop at a boring, I'm sorry, but a boring airport hotel in Delhi, this might be a very interesting experience and option to just be at. So one is that. The second, to answer your question with reference to the families and the experiences, we have now, so I will answer this question by giving you the insight into experiences. We have various things that we share, things like food experiences, bird life walks, the camel experiences, the night walks. We've chosen some nights which are very special, and you can be creating some trails, you can do some night walks. The experiences with the cows. Now, there are 2 ways of experiencing these things. One is passive experience, passively observing, and one is actively, in an involved manner, enjoying that experience. It is not a boot camp that everybody's got to do this, but it's something as you feel like. It is a way of life. We orient you to all of this. And today we are harvesting. We publish a calendar for a week, 10 days, for a month. We're at the sowing time, we're at the harvesting time, we're at weeding time. We prepare our own, herbicides and pesticides. So today we are saying we are going to be creating a neem, cold pressed neem oil based, pesticide. So, you want to partake in that. So it is fair to say that every time you come, you might experience something different based on the time that you visit and based on the activities that are going around at the farm. Camel, I would like to add to or spend a little more time over. Camel has been a part of a farmer's life in Rajasthan over centuries and centuries, right? The role that it played in a man in Rajasthan in his or in a desertic situation, our life. So we have curated some experiences where you can, go take a camel for grazing, and you can take a walk with them. You can go water them. You can see hair art on them. You can plow the field while the camels are plowing the field with them. You can eat, bread cooked on camel dropping. And of course, that's another topic that, the question to Western minds will come, that is it sterile or not sterile? But I would like to add that anything which is cooked on any animal dropping across the world is better than the sterilization of needles that is done, because that goes into the heat at a certain degree. This is on fire for more than 30-40 minutes, and then you cook on it. So there is no question of any infection per se or bacteria or anything like that. So, these kind of experiences, along with the cameliers and the camel keepers in this situation, it's not a safari, it's not a joyride, it is an intimate experience with the whole environment. With reference to children and family, it's something which I have experienced already in a very short time that we have been receiving guests, is that the children absolutely love it. I think they probably get their folks and their parents and their family to be more involved because it's fascinating. These things are simple and fascinating. So yes, it's absolutely a destination or a space. I would say destination. I think I take the liberty to say it can be looked at as an independent destination, also looked at as a stop in Shekhawati. It's a rural edition in Shekhawati. We belong to a family from Mandawa, the same family, and part of the fortress is with my part of the family, which we are in the process of restoring and conserving. We hope to move on the part of eventually creating some sort of a cultural space over there. And so we have curated a tour of Mandawa or Shekhawati towns with an understanding of why the hell did people 300 years ago come and stay in a desertic situation like this? Give more meaning to the mansions. Why did my forefathers live here? And then curated the whole experience around the Shekhawati Havelis. So that is if it interests someone. So otherwise, even if it doesn't, it's something which is an independent space where, I don't know, I mean, I'm overstepping, but 4 or 5 days is also probably not enough sometimes, depending on the guests or the travelers and their interest levels. It is, so in a nutshell, these are the experiences that I mentioned, and we are very, very, very proud and happy to share all of this with everyone.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. My next question is to Srini from Nilambari. Local community forms a very important role in the success of any rural venture. So how do you involve the local community in the experiences you offer at your place?
Yeah, for us, I think farming is kind of an integral part of any rural tourism experience. And yes, our village, we are blessed with different crops. Paddy is, of course, a staple, and we have huge paddy fields in our village. We also have a lot of plantation, the Kerala banana, and then we have few farms in our village, and then we take our guests to these farms. We also arrange a lot of farming interactions for these guests. And other than that, another aspect of community involvement is where we arrange for our guests to visit local artisans. This is very important because the whole idea of rural tourism, I mean, the way I look at it is that it acts as a bulwark against the kind of urbanization and globalization that's happening, especially, as I said earlier, with Kerala's population density and demography. The boundaries between suburban and rural and urban and suburban is very fast eroding. Probably those of you who work in Delhi would kind of relate to that much better than we do in Kerala. So rural tourism essentially acts as a bulwark. So the woodworkers or the smiths, the goldsmiths, the blacksmiths, their traditional methods of working is sometimes becoming obsolete, or people are not attaching any value to it. So these kind of interactions that we arrange with local artisans, again, is very engaging for the guests, but at the same time, it's also a reaffirmation of the tradition and the heritage we have, and is an incentive for these artisans to continue their preserve and enhance on their traditional ways of working. Another aspect of community involvement is on the cultural tourism side. So from within Neelambari, so I clearly distinguish between classical cultural experiences, that's very dear to me, but that's very distinct from folk or rural cultural experiences. So within a rural tourism framework, it's the folk element that's more important. So again, and folk is much more interesting sometimes because they predate classical culture, and the entire attitude, the lack of training, or what sometimes appears to be a formal lack of formal training, or the way it blends so easily into your daily life. And all these things make rural or folk culture much more beautiful or appealing sometimes than classical culture. So we arrange a lot of folk cultural experiences in Neelambari. We arrange interaction with these folk artists. And as I said, the entire process, I'll go back to my earlier point, the entire idea for me around Neelambari is discovery. I mean, every time I accompany a guest to a specific experience, I discover a new facet around that experience, be it farming, be it culture, be it tradition, be it history, be it craftsmanship. So the crux there is that discovery, and discover things in a new light, or discover new information altogether. So yes, just to summarize, yes, in farming, in craftsmen, and in culture, we arrange for a lot of local interactions, exploration, and discovery for our guests.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Tamishka, my question to you is about food. So
Yes.
local food stories and recipes form a big part of the Shahpura experience. So
Yes, they
can the
do.
guests, do they get, yeah, so tell us about the rural style meal and something about food, something special about food that you offer at Shahpura Bagh.
When we opened our home to visitors, we had a cook called Mota. He was in the family again for generations, very possessive about his recipes. So he was working in the kitchen with his sons, but he would not teach them the recipes. And all the recipes have a little bit of tweaking to it, wherein how you massage your meat is also very important to the final outcome. So when you're talking about traditional Rajasthani meals or tulas or kebabs, Rajasthani kebabs, or you're talking about how to make and he knew a lot of colonial recipes also because of the colonial impact of on Rajasthan. So all of these recipes are very close to his heart. So we really wanted to promote that, not promote, but expose people to it. In Rajasthan, there are not a lot of fruits and vegetables available. Now we have our own vegetable patch, vegetable garden, with drip irrigation, etc. coming in, we can afford to do that. In the initial days, we didn't. So a lot of Rajasthani food is surrounded around meat products, or if not, then we make vegetables out of green. So pittor or gatta or even kher sangri. All of these are not vegetables. These are curries that are made out of greens. These are the different types of things that we like to initiate people who come to Rajasthan and teach them how to cook this. But we realized that it's not enough. Indian cooking is very overwhelming. It's also a very daunting process when you open a sheet of paper and you see that there's 50 ingredients with a 45-minute cooking time. So to make it a little less overwhelming, we made it kind of into a one-day program. So the one-day program, it's basically we'll give you a list of your ingredients. The procurement of the ingredients is also up to you, depending on the time of the year, what's going on our property. We'll do maybe one aubergine dish, one traditional lal mas. So the process is, first you go to our farm, pick up the few fruits and vegetables that are growing over there that may help in the cooking interaction that you're having. Also going into the market, going into the town and into the market and buying these little spices, 5 to 6 different types of spices in every dishes, just to be able to see that it's not so daunting. You can do it yourself. Go and buy these dishes on your own and then come back and cook it yourself. So you have somebody who's cooking in front of you, but you have your entire setup for yourself as well. So you can do it from scratch. Of course, we'll butt in if you're making a mistake so that you don't have to eat burnt food. But yeah, I think it has to be, when you're talking about experiences, because that's what people are looking for right now. I think it has to be organic and interactive. You can have the fanciest equipment with the most polished chefs, but it will not be a true experience till it isn't authentic. Unfortunately, Mota isn't with us right now, but his sons did manage to learn a few recipes from him with their own twist as well. So encouraging people to also learn these recipes and add their own flavors to our traditional food really gives them more motivation to go back home. They're like, okay, I went on a holiday, I went to India. This is my return from my vacation party, and I'm going to cook you all an Indian meal. So it gives them the confidence to be able to do that. While also it highlights that you can have a full 3-course meal without having even a non-stick fry pan, because we're doing all of our cooking on a chula or on. You don't need the fancy ingredients that you usually need. I mean, if you look at what people eat in the villages over here, it's usually one very well-made vegetable dish and chapatis, because that is all that they can afford. So just trying to highlight that. Of course, we are also, we're not charging people to come here. They're charged, and so they do have the option of opting for something not so experimental if they are not comfortable with it.
Yes, I think food and dining experiences are a huge part of any rural place and rural space. And you also offer something beautiful at the fort. The dining experience.
The dining experience at the fort, I think, is a highlight for almost every guest that has visited us. Even if they don't go there for dinner, even if it's just sundowners, they don't understand that we are not taking you to a fort to show you the fort. The fort is just the place where you're having that experience. Just to give you all a little insight into what I'm saying, it's a 400-year-old fort, which is a 15 to 20-minute drive from our main property where your guests will reside. And the 400-year-old fort on one side is completely, on one side there are like 7 lakes that fill up to look like an ocean. So when you're sitting on the fort, on one side you see this small little village, and on the other side you see this lake that goes on till your eyes can see. And to be able to see so much water or even land without people in India is a luxury. So you feel like you're on a private fort, and we light it up using natural light, only mashals with fire and as little artificial light as possible. And we set up a turret on the fort for you. One turret for a bottle of champagne or wine when the sun is going down and the sky is changing its colors, and a beautiful sunset. And the minute the sun goes down, we light up these mashals, make you walk through it. So it's like you've gone 400 years back in time. There are no torches, they're actual lanterns. The fort looks 400 years old. We haven't painted it. We've got an architect to make sure that everything is safe. But other than that, not a lot goes into it. Come up with a great kitchen and a bathroom. And I think that's all you need. The more simple you keep it, the more impactful it is.
Yeah, thanks, Samiksha. Food obviously is an essential part of any farm stay. I know Harkirat does a beautiful job with the bonfire, and his whole bar is out, and they do beautiful barbecue. And I'm sure Smriti has a lovely experience. I've seen what they do with their traditional Rajasthan, the typical what farmers would eat, that kind of a meal experience. Srini, I know Nilambur also has a very beautiful food experience. So food is actually an integral part of the a whole rural stay concept.
In fact, Praveen, I forgot to mention one thing which we really give an experience is we've started doing the wedding experience.
Wedding experience, okay.
Where we have people who come and they want to get married the Punjabi way. Basically, we do people who come and exchange vows again. So that is a typical 3-day wedding. You know about it. You know how it goes. And, it's basically
it's beautiful actually.
Great experience of 3 days which we do.
Punjabi weddings are the most fun. So I think I want to come for the wedding experience.
We'll go to Nankara.
Yeah, so the weddings they do a beautiful renewing of vows ceremony, and it's done in a traditional way, and you have the bride side and the groom side, and it's great fun. Good for groups and incentive travel. Okay, so now I'm going to just summarize and wind up a little bit because we've already spent an hour chatting. My last summarization would be on sustainability. Listening to all of you, that's what I feel the crux of our rural tourism really is sustainability. You incorporate local wisdom, and you are connected with the community, local community. You enjoy the local food. All of you are environmental conscious, and I think is what makes it very, very, very sustainable. As Tamiksha was saying, her ancestors built all these lakes, so water harvesting is a huge aspect of a part of their property. And a lot of people are talking about sustainability at the same time. So environment also, and as I was saying, the Srini's property is also huge on environment. So I'd like to just end with one quick question from all of you in 1 or 2 lines on closing remarks. So where does rural tourism stand in comparison, to a whole lot of other kinds of tourism, adventure, etc.? So as I said, India lives in its villages, and most of our tourism is actually rural tourism. Where do you think is the potential for developing it further in the coming years? What is an area we haven't explored yet? Harki, can we start with you on this?
See, rural tourism has always been very interesting for people from urban areas. But seeing post-COVID, what I feel that people are going to head towards the rural areas. In fact, I've started this campaign with the Government of India, in which it says that see India through her villages, drive through rural India, because every part of India, every village of India has a different story. And I think it is our responsibility also to tell people to come and visit us and see what they have been missing out. It's a big opportunity for people in the rural areas like Rajasthan, Kerala, Karnataka. It's just beautiful. And, people are also looking at not very big establishments to go to. They want to go to a place where it's not very crowded. It's not, very far from where they are. So it's going to be a lot of localized tourism now for another 1 year, where, for example, Karnataka, people are going to go around 400 kilometers, 500 kilometers. Rajasthan there, because people are a little apprehensive to go out a little far away also. But I think it's a very promising time for rural India, and I think Indian campaign should start with the tourism campaign. They should start with see India.
Rural tourism.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Very catchy line.
We all are going to be part of this. We are like those mid-cap stocks, that which going to go up and join the blue chip companies soon. Let me tell you.
I hope so. Srini, your last words on the subject.
Yeah, so since it's my concluding remark, I'll kind of thank all of you, and thank you especially Lovely for kind of guiding us through this discussion. It has been a pleasure, really. So coming on sustainable or tourism. So for me, yes, rural tourism, sustainable tourism, responsible tourism, experiential tourism, ecotourism, all these are very closely connected.
Yeah.
none of them are identical. I mean, all of them, they cannot be used interchangeably. All of them have got their own very real meanings. And it's becoming more and more important and relevant. I mean, ours is the generation, I believe. I mean, I suppose all of us belong to the same generation. So ours is the generation, I believe, is the first one to realize that not everything is positive about, industrialization or what we have been considering progress for the last 3 or 4 centuries. Fine. I mean, colonialism was one byproduct, and then the last generation, in the mid of 20th century, we saw an end to colonialization. But rest of the globalization trends that has been going for the last 3-4 centuries, at this point, end of 20th century, beginning of this century, we realized that environment, it's not sustainable anymore. Ecosystem, it's not sustainable anymore. Rural and smaller communities and developing communities, it's not sustainable anymore. So there has to be a rethink on the whole globalization, urbanization paradigm. And within the tourism ambit, rural tourism is probably one of the most important threads that has to work as a counter threat to this whole idea of urbanization. So from a sustainability perspective, involving local communities, I mean, not just in a kind of giving it lip service, but really making them stakeholders in what's happening, how the industry has to shape up, and taking their feedback, involving them very closely. That's probably the only way we can make sure that all these things that we have, all these beautiful things that we have around us, still stay there in the next 2 or 3 centuries further. I mean, we have to pass it on to our generation. As I believe all my panelists have been saying, we are custodians. We are custodians not just of our property, we are custodians of our heritage, culture, tradition, everything, and we have to pass it on in a much better way.
Very, very well said. And I think unless Smriti or Tamiksha have something to add to this, we'll end otherwise. So Smriti, you have something to say?
Okay, I completely, Shiniji, thank you so much. I think you summed it up brilliantly. And I don't think even for like 1% also, I'm not on the same page as you are, and your thought process is bang on. I'll just add to that, how you said that, it's having said whatever you said, but what this, I would say, countryside, tourism, rural, eco, responsible, adventure, food, all of this put together in a nutshell. Being in spaces like these gives us the opportunity to really feel things and see the process up close. If I have this food on my table, I can see the entire process of how it has come to me. If I see a tree, a farm, an animal, we see this entire process in its entirety, which in itself ignites a different emotion, connection, and feeling. So I would add to what Shiniji said, just this point. Thank you.
Beautiful, Smriti. Thank you for your insight. And I'd like to thank all the panelists for contributing and for your insights. We are now open to, we are now open to questions from our participants, our viewers. And let's see if there are questions.